Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Right Time, a Wave Sports and Entertainment original presented by Prize Picks. My name is Bomani Jones. It's Wave Original. We're changing things up. Sorry about that. I'm like a machine in that way. My name is Bomani Jones. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcast. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars. I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. Sorry, guys. I'm looking up. I realize sometimes the camera be a little bit crooked. I look like my shirt ain't drinking enough V8 or one of the things. Either way, I don't know. Right fast. Want to send a shout out our loyal listeners. Check this out. We got an ad-free version of The Right Time in partnership with Supercast. For $5 a month, not only will you get ad-free versions of every episode, but it'll include bonus content like AMAs and special episodes you can only find on Supercast. Our first AMA episode will launch next Monday on President's Day, so make sure you get your questions in so I can answer them. Also, shout out to the folks at Apple Podcasts for selecting us, that's right, The Right Time, as the pick of the month in sports. Also, shout out to my guy Lance, who be in the chat on the YouTube. It is a dude named Jason Mahr, M-A-H-R. Get his sorry ass out of here already. He showed up in this motherfucker calling me a clown before we even got started. We got to start nipping some of this in the bud. You know what I'm saying? Get him out. Look at him. Look, y'all see him in the chat right now. Can you imagine being so miserable that you show up just wanting to hate and I ain't even had a single word to say? That's why people don't like y'all. Anyway, what a time. It was a I got Sean in my ear laughing. Like, that's the part that y'all don't understand. This is how, like, Sean, you see the vision? You see what we got to do sometime?
Yeah, he's out of there. It's strict rules on a Monday.
Yeah, we had to go belt to ass to him just like the Eagles went belt to ass to the Chiefs. Boy, that was first class showing up. Beat them down. Top to bottom in that bad boy. Now, I want to say something right fast for me as person who occasionally attempts to make predictions, right? I admit, I wish I was as good at this as my buddy Nick. Not so much as good at the prediction, but he cares less about being right about these things than I do, which is funny because in real life, he cares a lot more about being right than I do. But anyway, on these sorts of things, man, I don't be really liking to hear y'all smack after the fact. And it's not so much because I have a problem with being wrong. It's just the people, those of you who do that, you know, like, you're whacking your own life. Like, I know this, you know this, we can all see it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, this is what I've come to realize, Sean. This is the second time that I have made a Super Bowl prediction where I picked the Chiefs strictly because they had Patrick Mahomes in ignorance of everything else that was going on and that I could see with my own 2 eyes. And maybe I should stop doing that.
Yeah, I think you were like, you just got caught up in the, well, I can't go against Mahomes.
Yes,
that momentum kept building, whereas, like, you know, for all the listeners of the show, all year you were like, this guy's playing bad. The Chiefs are playing bad. Yes, yet they keep winning. And I think that momentum got caught. I thought it was really funny.
It finally got me.
Exactly. At the wrong time.
Yes, so to speak. Well done. Well played. They finally got me. So this is what the thing is, right? And people hit me up during the game. You still saying that he's Jordan? Yeah, he's still Jordan. The thing is, Jordan play a sport that's 5-on-5, and they play series. This sport does not allow in the same way the singularity of that one person. Drank a little bit too much of the Kool-Aid, got a little bit too high on it, and everything I said about the Chiefs as this went through the regular season came to fruition in the actual game. Every single thing of it. Somehow I was wrong in the short run while I had been correct completely in the long run. But that happens, right? They managed to wiggle their way through, and that know how to win stuff. That know how to win stuff matters at the margins. And if you have teams that are like reasonably similar to one another, that stuff checks out. When you're playing against a team with much more talent than you, and I think that we would have to acknowledge the Eagles have much more talent than the Chiefs. And that is not a specific shade to the Chiefs because the Eagles apparently have much more talent than everybody else. When that happens, we know how to win. Ain't that big a deal. Like, have you seen that clip from the Netflix doc about the Olympic basketball team? And I think it was Evan Fournier that was talking about the French and their chemistry and how they've been playing together for 10 years and how all of that matters. And Kevin Durant's question was, what that chemistry matter when you got to guard Steph? Right? Like, that is an extension of the point, is that all these things and all your knowledge, institutional knowledge, all this stuff, all that's cool, except when them other dudes is moving furniture and you're the couch. Right? Both of your lines was couches. Both of the Eagles lines was wearing khaki suits. You know what I'm saying? They was picking them boys up and moving them around. The stat that everybody's been bouncing around that is so amazing about this game is that the Eagles did not blitz one time. I don't think Patrick Mahomes believes that. If you're Patrick Mahomes, the only way you believe that they weren't blitzing is if you think they had 13 people on the field. All right? He's dropping back. They're rushing 4. Not only are they in his kitchen, nobody's open. Right? Like, Mahomes played badly. This is not in the name of making an excuse for him. He did not play well. However, it was him not playing well combined with those other dudes just being completely unfair. First of all, shout out to Jalen Carter. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know very much about that man personally. I don't. He seems really mean. Like, he seems like he is not a nice person. And I don't feel like the league got so many of those anymore, right? Just these old Mr. Mean motherfuckers that you know just be coming out here salty. Sean, did you see on that one play where he hit Mahomes in the face for no reason?
The double face smack, I was like waiting for that illegal hands to the face penalty to drop, and I was like, he got the ball out at the right time. I think America really enjoyed that Jalen Carter like hit. That was I think well deserved. Man.
Just all of it. They were. I mean, I am trying to think that Legion of Boom Super Bowl against Peyton Manning and the Broncos is maybe this thorough debacling as I have seen is the one that we saw right there. But when I used to do a TV show with Dan Le Batard, the point that he made, and I'm sure he made this point today because it is a great point. If you can get pressure with 4 people in football, everything is downhill. Like, I remember in the year 2009, all right, I'm going to do some old man stuff. Sean, let me throw this out here, by the way. I said something about that game looking a lot like the Sugar Bowl between Miami and Alabama in January of 93. And I know that you don't remember this, but those of us who was there, it was favored Miami going for their repeat championship at that place where you don't bet against them. And Alabama just went out there and dog walked them. All the way, including maybe the most incredible play I had ever seen up to that point in my life. Lamar Thomas running away from the Alabama defense, except George Teague ran him down from behind, threw his arm over his shoulder with a Lawrence Taylor tackle, brought him back, and took the ball from him in one motion and started running back the other way. And the most arrogant team there has ever been was just left in silence. Lamar Thomas, sideline, towel over his head, all of that. In that building, by the way, in that exact same building. That was the closest thing I had as comparable to that. Sean, somebody got in my mentions and said a 90s reference is wild. What do you want me to do?
Yeah,
like, what are you talking about?
That's how sports works. What a ridiculous comment.
Sorry, guy, I had to go that far back to get to an ass whooping this thorough. You act like I'm out here talking about Johnny Unitas and Alan the Horse Amici or something like that. I hate you people's kids. I hate them so much. I don't even know why your little ass follows me if you can't even go back to the night. Anyway, I forgot. I got a little charged up.
To your point, the comparison is spot on because it was clear that it felt like one team truly bullied and snatched the game from them immediately. Yeah.
Immediately. Like, I didn't want to say at 10-0 it was over. It felt over. But people were like, well, the Chiefs have been down 10 points in all their Super Bowls. And then they got to 17, and I'm like, ugh, they're done in this town. Then they got to 24, and it's like, ugh, yikes. And Sean, did it get up to like 31 before they scored?
Yeah, the Super Bowl party I was at, everyone just kept asking, has there been a shutout at the Super Bowl? And like, are we about to experience one? Which I thought was like,
I was thinking
more impossible than a scoregami at a Super Bowl is an actual shutout. Like, you can't get a field goal in this game, you know?
Yo, they had them so shook, like when DeAndre Hopkins dropped that pass, right? Ugh. Like, even when Mahomes could finally get something going, right? And never mind, he threw it in. Hey, man. imagine like if somebody hadn't been watching the whole season, or perhaps they did not listen to this show, and they saw Patrick Mahomes threw a pick six to some white boy from Iowa. Can you imagine just like trying to wrap your head around what was going on?
Imagine being, let's say, a more conservative football fan and fan of politics, seeing that happen at that game. Your mind will be like, what is going on right now?
Hey, let me throw out a point right fast. I'm gonna keep your face on the screen because I need people to think about this just for a second, right? Cooper Dejean is a cornerback. He is a white cornerback. He is not the first white cornerback in the NFL since Jason Sehorn. I believe Riley Moss is the first white cornerback since Jason Sehorn in the NFL, and Riley Moss plays for the Denver Broncos. But what Cooper Dejean and Riley Moss have in common is they both went to the University of Iowa. I have long said that Kirk Ferentz runs a DEI fence over there. Okay, there was a year very recently where they had more white players on defense, white starters on defense, than literally the entire Southeastern Conference. Okay, you don't do that by accident. You are doing this intentionally. This is what you want to do. This is how you go about it. Okay, player, I get you. I see you, and I'm not mad at you. And the reason I'm not mad at you is these dudes are good, okay? You are clearly making a conscientious effort to go find some white dudes and put them in places where people don't normally put white dudes, and thereby Iowa reap success, these players reap success, and now the NFL is reaping success also. And all I'm saying is, don't tell me you don't understand the whole idea behind this. Is not exactly DEI, because DEI is something else. But the idea that just because you make an effort to put somebody in those positions does not mean those people are by definition unqualified. In fact, what it very often means is you truly find people that your competition cannot find because they're not truly making an effort to find the best people. Where Kirk Ferentz, I don't know if he's really trying that hard to find the best people, but he is trying to find the best white ones. And he digging up under rocks and stones and everything else. And then what did you see? The greatest quarterback of all time being intercepted by a Caucasian whose fast ass took it all the way back to the house. I'm just saying, just letting you know, maybe, just maybe, if you looked at it through this lens, you would understand the point. And you know what their point is? Well, maybe we need to get more white dudes on defense. That is what they will see. They will not extend it all the way over, but suddenly I bet you see the principle.
And to your point, I think the Eagles are going to catch on to that, right? Like their defensive line's all Georgia. Maybe their secondary is going to be all white guys from Iowa now, which is an incredible turn of events. Also amazing that Cooper Dejean is their kick returner and punt returner.
Look, man.
He's got it all.
Man, he the future, bro. He the future, bro. That's all I'm saying is they are not being boxed in by society. You know what I'm saying? You got to think bigger than that. But anyway, if you can rush 4 and drop 7, I remember it's 2009. It's at Florida State. This is the last year of Bobby Bowden, and I always said that Mickey Andrews got Bobby Bowden fired. Mickey Andrews was their long-standing defensive coordinator. And Dominique said something through all the years of playing against Florida State when he was in college. He was like, hey, man, they're not doing anything schematically against you worth talking about. They're just going with my players are better than your players, and we're going to keep it simple, and we're going to go from there. And the thing about Mickey Andrews was Mickey Andrews may have been a great defensive coordinator. I don't know. But what Mickey Andrews had was faster players than everybody else. And so my buddy Adam Gold made the point, Mickey could just rush 4 and drop 7, and everything would take care of itself. Like, if you can rush 4, John Shoup used to be offensive coordinator at North Carolina and a few other places in the NFL and in college. He made that point. The most aggressive defenses are the ones that can rush 4. If you can rush 4 and drop 7, everything is there. And once the Eagles realized that all they had to do was rush 4 and drop 7, there was nothing left to talk about. Meanwhile, the Chiefs went out there with a very simple plan. The quarterback is going to beat us. We're going to stop Saquon Barkley, and the quarterback is going to have to beat us. And the quarterback, in large part, did. Jalen Hurts did. And look, I have been one of those people who was critical of him. I said that you can win with him, but you're not going to win because of him. I actually think that's what happened in this game, right? Like, I think the biggest thing that happened, the Chiefs had something like 25 yards total in the first half. Like, what are we talking about? That's insane. Or, turning the ball over, running the ball back, and running interceptions back and everything else. But Jalen Hurts did the job. That's the only part that matters. Like, I'm not going to take this time to say anything bad about him. He absolutely did the job. But the Eagles so thoroughly dominated in every way. And what hurts is this. You're not going to insult him, right? You're not going to be able to say, hey, we're going to do this to Saquon Barkley because you can't beat us. This was more so, we're going to do this to Saquon Barkley because that's our best chance. And he made the plays that had to be made. He made the throws that had to be made. He threw an interception that don't really matter at this point. Scrambled and got big runs when they needed it. Got himself a Super Bowl MVP. A little surprised he ain't throw a shout out to my boy Dominique. I know his agent, when they went to the Super Bowl, she hit Dominique with that pretty privileged shout out. You know, I thought he was going to get it like with Steph Curry hit him with that. I think Dominique better about this stuff than I am. I don't want to be on the business end of that. I don't mind you. If you got jokes for your boy, you got jokes for your boy. I just don't like them to go on forever. Like, once I decide it's old, it's old. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Jalen Hurts is that sort of guy. Did you see that quote, Sean, where they asked him before if all this criticism provides him secret motivation? And he said, it ain't no secret.
Yeah, he's just a machine with the quotes. It's like he's reading them off a book, but it comes off with this level of aura that you're like, he really believes this shit.
You know how I knew how he knew they was gonna win that game? When he showed up looking like Grimace. Did you see that? Did you see that outfit? Yeah, that top to bottom eggplant situation that he had. Not even no gold, because you know he had cute. So I thought it might have been purple and gold. No, sir. He was straight Grimace. I have no idea like he came straight Grimace, but you gotta win when you do that.
And I think he was so much more locked in than, let's say, the quarterback on the other side in Patrick Mahomes. There was a clip from Chris Long, who, you know, we hung out with a bit in New Orleans, but there was a clip where Chris Long was saying after the NFC Championship, Chris was in their locker room partying with them, and Jalen Hurts was one of the few people who was like not as celebratory. And when Chris came up to him, Hurts was like, he's like, this is all destiny. He's like, I already know we're gonna win this thing, and was just like so locked in and game focused.
Well, Sean, to be fair, how locked in can you be when you're standing on a freeway and cars are flying at you?
Yeah,
that was the Patrick Mahomes situation, is that he's dropping back. Somehow nobody's open and 3 people are in my face. How is that the case?
He only got sacked 6 times, which feels like a low number if you watch that game and how much.
Think of how crazy that is.
Yeah.
What a crazy thing to say. 6 feels low. 6. We're talking about 6 times, and I was stunned and floored. So this is a team that had a quarterback that I have long questioned, that has a coach that I have long questioned, and they did not win. They dominated. They obliterated. Moral of the story, kids, if you're in this TV game, don't bet on the team that's out here like using tape to fill up their offensive line. One of them interceptions Mahomes got, because I tell you the Eagles is moving furniture. They threw the left tackle, a.k.a. the end table, into Mahomes. Motherfucker trying to change the channel. Next thing you know, people threw some furniture at him, and then boom, he broke the TV. Like, that's what it went down. That was it. Hey, man, shout out to the Eagles. Shout out to you Eagles fans that I like, which is not all of you, but it is a significant number of you. I do admit, like you guys evoke a strange range of feelings. Right fast, I just want to say something before we get to the next topic, okay? Now, Sean, you and I were there in New Orleans for much of the week. When did you recover, by the way? Because it took me quite a while.
I made sure Friday night, because I knew I had a flight Saturday, that I was like, and plus the city just got chaotic. We're going to talk about it in the If You Haven't Heard segment. But yeah, Friday night I was like, maybe this is the time for me to really like retire and be done with this trip.
So Friday night I wound up in a fascinating evening, time and place or whatever.
I remember.
But I got to be DMC, which is like extra super duper really cool. And he knew who I was, and he shouted me out from the stage. And I just
crazy.
Okay, I should probably say that for the next thing. That was the thing. But man, New Orleans wore me out. I mean, yesterday I was just here, and it took me forever to get home. New Orleans wore me out. It was a hell of a week. I was so tired. I was so beat down, but not like the Chiefs. Whoa! Sorry, we just playing. It ain't time for the hotline. All right, Sean. I think in a lot of ways, this is what people actually came here to hear us talk about, which is Super Bowl halftime show with Kendrick Lamar.
I felt like the Super Bowl was actually the opening act for the Kendrick Lamar performance.
Yes. Now, I mentioned that thing with DMC right fast. Since we're going to talk about music here, I want to continue this. So it was a fairly corporate gig. DMC was there without Run, and he was rapping. And I just want to say something right fast. I understand where people come from when they talk about, like, the basic idea of what rap was in the 80s and all of this stuff. Sean, he did It's Tricky. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember what the first song was that he did. But, dude, no, them songs still bang. Them songs still bang. Like, I was amazed at just how good he is at rapping. No matter what it is that you think rap is supposed to be, DMC, with what you might consider them primitive raps, still had the room on fire.
No, I mean, that's why that stuff worked, because obviously, like, I got to late, but it's timeless music. Like, at the end of the day, Run DMC has made timeless music that will last and stand the test of time.
Yeah, it was King of Rock. You started with King of Rock. But I was just like, but every now and then I get in a place to see old school rappers and I'm just like, oh man, you are controlling this, right? Yep. Like you have our full utmost attention and your voice carries in such a way that makes you stand up, right? And part of that was, I saw Chuck D talk about this once because I was on a podcast with Touré, and Touré got also caught up in the idea of a modern flow and a pocket and everything else. And what Chuck said was, his style was more ballistic because that was what the equipment required. Like the equipment required you to speak with a certain tone and a certain gravity because that was what it took to make your voice carry with the beats and what the microphones were and everything else. That is what it took. And so what you wind up with as a result of that is a generation of truly superior live performers because they had no other choice. Like I read something once about Frank Sinatra that was interesting, where Frank Sinatra introduced, and I've seen multiple people mention this though, but it talked about how Frank Sinatra introduced the idea of the microphone as an instrument because there are ways in which he would sing. I think you could say this also about Sam Cooke with like that flutter in his voice. You can't do that singing without a microphone, right? You can't amplify your voice and do that, but it allowed you to do like some little more subtle things that people think are more interesting, but you can do that because of the amplification that comes from the technology or that advent. I bring that up to talk about Kendrick Lamar because I think there's levels that we could talk about this halftime show, okay? And if you want to view this halftime show as a continuation of the middle finger of Drake and you love nothing more than Drake receiving that middle finger, I don't know if you could have possibly asked for a better show. Like, he continued it to the point where I, and you guys know how I feel about this, I am like, okay, it's got to be over now, right? Like, he did the game over thing at the end, and I'm like, okay, I've had enough. I don't think there's anything else interesting that you can do with relation to your beef with Drake. I think you did it. You played your song at the end. You had Serena Williams out there crip walking to it. You did the whole thing, right? You got it. You dropped the say Drake. You know, you talked about this cat thing about he want to sue you and everything else. You got all that. You demonstrated your defiance toward him in that moment, and you did that, okay? But if we're going to talk about the rest of the show, guys, I think that we can all be honest about this, okay? It reminded me of another Kendrick Lamar song that was not performed. I would say that the halftime show was all right. That was it. It was all right. It was a good show. I can't use the term that I want to use because y'all take it the wrong way. But, you know, I'm going to say it. It was mid, right? But mid in the way those of us who used to have to deal with stems and seeds say mid, okay? It was a pretty good show. This is what it felt like to me, okay? it felt like a show maybe better suited for an arena in terms of energy, but it was a stadium show. I felt like I have seen Kendrick shows on award shows with like the Imagine Dragons behind him that I felt like had more energy than this show. I felt like the energy that he had when he did All Right during the G-Funk Super Bowl, I thought that that had more energy than this. And so, yeah, we can talk about all these cultural elements. We could talk about all the Easter eggs that he had in there and all of that stuff, right? The thing about a Super Bowl halftime show for me is that it's supposed to be big. It's supposed to feel grand. And it did not feel grand, right? I think the Beyonce show at halftime on Christmas was more of the scale of what a Super Bowl halftime show should be than this one was, right? If you switch those shows, I think the Kendrick would have worked well for the Christmas halftime and the Beyonce would have worked better for the Super Bowl halftime because she thought in the grandiose level that you need, I think, to put on a Super Bowl show, which is grandiose by definition. This, to me, was not a grand enough show. It wasn't about the songs. And people are like, he didn't even play his hits. Yes, he did. Humble is his biggest hit. He played that. He played DNA, which is right up there. He played that. He made the decision to play the new album, which, by the way, I don't think I really blame him for doing because I would imagine if he picked up any new fans in the course of the last 9 months, they would have been the people that was all over GNX. I don't love GNX like that, but it's not crazy the idea that he would play his most recent heat or what people think is his most recent heat. Yeah, all of that made sense in the song selection and everything else. I just felt like, you ever been to a party that just didn't have enough people? Not because there weren't people, but the room was too big, and so it didn't feel like the energy was contained like that. That was what I felt like when I was watching it. So yeah, you could talk about how black it was, and you could talk about how he did it for the culture, whatever that means, right? You can get into all of that. In the end, I don't blame anybody who said that they felt bored by watching that show because he did not carry it. Like, it was a little bit too cool. You know? He rapped very well, right? Like, technically speaking and all of that stuff, but it was too cool. And I felt like it needed to be a bigger show. I wanted a bigger show. And quite honestly, I imagine the NFL and everybody else wanted a bigger show. That being said, he made the show he wanted to make. And as far as making the show that he wanted to make, I think he accomplished all the goals of that. And Sean, 70,000 people sang a minor.
Yeah, to your point that you've been mentioning, like it wasn't a spectacle, which I think every Super Bowl halftime performance should be. But if you've seen anything of Kendrick ever since he left TD and started his own brand in PG Lang, it's like all he really focuses on is the visuals and the art and making it truly his. Which at the end of the day, like you said, it was. But you know, that A minor in the entire stadium probably is all you really need.
Yeah, like people are talking about, oh man, it's the sound. My issue is not with how loud it was, right? That's not what we're talking about here. The issue is truly with the energy level and like loud and When I did that show on HBO, that was one of the things I had to learn is that they'd be like, yo, we need more energy, and I would get louder. Those aren't perfect substitutes, right? Like those two things don't necessarily mean the same thing. What he did was what I always say about Ether. Ether, I thought Takeover was better than Ether for the longest, but Ether was for an audience of one, and it absolutely nailed and connected with that audience of one. And Kendrick was clearly talking to Drake. Sean, I was mistaken. I didn't realize in Australia it actually was the afternoon when that show was going on. So, you know,
so he was very awake.
Yes, he was wide awake. So what do you think? Do you think Drake watched it with a bunch of people, or he told people they couldn't watch it and they all pretended that they had to go somewhere and then they went and watched it?
Yeah, it was probably the latter of like, no one's supposed to watch it. Da, 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 we're in the club, and then you see him in his little iPhone, like watching it on the side, you know?
Yeah. Now here's the other thing that happened too. Sean, did you see the dude with the Palestinian flag, the Palestinian and Sudanese flag?
Who was a dancer on staff.
Yes.
And he was released without bail recently, this morning, I believe, on no charges.
Hold on, let's talk about this, right? First of all, when did he cook up this bright idea? Right? When did he come up with this idea that this was what he was going to do? Because that was a bold move to make, right?
Big move. Career-ending move, potentially.
Perhaps, right? So he did this. He held up the flag, and he's out there for the longest with the flag. And security, there's really nothing for security to do here because he's not a trespasser. Like, they detained him after he did it, and the articles in the AP said they were trying to figure out a charge. They didn't have no charge. Now, nothing like that happened to me, but after I wore that T-shirt that one time on TV, you remember that?
Yes.
The thing that was very clear to me was everybody was trying to find a charge, but they couldn't think of a charge, right? They just knew it felt like I did something wrong, right? And that dude did something wrong, but that was for the choreographer to come out there and tackle that dude. Security went out there and took him down, but they were just in the back like, what can we do? What can we do? It feels like a crime, but it's not really a crime unless freedom of speech is literally over.
Yeah, they took him back and they're like, oh, shoot, he's credentialed. We can't do anything.
Right. We can't. Like, that was the wild thing. When I watched it back, I was like, damn, he's actually part of the show, right? He was wearing the same gear as everybody else. I tell you this, I tell you who should have tackled him. I would have tackled him if that was my Grand National out there.
Yes.
You out here working for $15 an hour when you standing on top of my GNX. Have you lost your goddamn mind? That should have been whoever the first person was. Like, somebody was telling me that Currency got a car shop out there, and they thought that maybe they got that GNX from Currency shop. It would have not have surprised me in the least if it was Currency that went out there and took him down. Currency blowing Currency's high standing on top of my car. Hell yeah. Like, if that was my car, you damn right I'm sitting out there at halftime. I'm keeping my eye on that Grand National the whole way. That would have been who did that, but no, they went and took his ass out of there. And I just imagined them, like, because a buddy of mine told me, I didn't realize this, there's a jail inside the Super Bowl. Asked my friend how he found out there was a jail inside of the Super Bowl. The Superdome. In the dome. Yeah. First-hand knowledge. But anyway, they didn't know. That was so wild. They didn't know what to do. And the protest actually worked because it didn't make it to the broadcast, but the shots from the crowd made it. And so it got amplified. It got blown up. They threw that dude in jail, all that. He got the cause out there. But this is my last question. After you do something like that, Sean, would you have the audacity to come ask for your check?
No. That's you earned your check by doing that. You're not going to get paid, but there's going to be a nice portion of people who will be like, I really respect what you did out there, while you have to defend yourself to everyone else.
Yeah, somebody got to give me my, it would take some real nerve to be like, okay, so today is Friday, aka payday. The NFL season is officially over, but the NBA is only heating up, which means you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite teams only on Prize Picks. You can make a Prize Picks lineup with NBA or even college basketball in as little as 60 seconds. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50. It's guaranteed. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. But rather than hearing from me, let's hear from our expert picker. All right, Sean, how the picks been going?
Bo, I believe I'm an expert in losing because this month obviously has not been the best. But for all my picks now, I can focus solely on hoops. And with the flex play, I can still cash out if my lineup isn't perfect. But as always, make sure you stick around for the end of each show to hear my upcoming picks. And if you know me, you know I'm always picking more.
There we go. So make sure you go to prizepicks.com/Bomani and use code Bomani for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/Bomani. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
We know you can't be on top of all the news and information of the day. No need for the social media feeds. We got you. Now, if you haven't heard.
So, Bo, I wanted to do a special, if you haven't heard, and for the audience, if you hadn't heard, Bo and I were in New Orleans for this week in the Super Bowl, and there were a lot of different socioeconomic things that we witnessed just by being there and being on the ground. I think the first obvious thing was the true amount of security that we saw on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter. And we saw military, we saw everything. Dominique and Bo talked about on the show. We saw the cops with the weird hats and all that stuff. But I wanted to show 2 or 3 tweets and wanted to discuss your thoughts as an economist who has studied it and been a part of this for a while, of how do we avoid things like this happening when a Super Bowl or an Olympics comes to a city? So I'm going to put up these tweets. We'll read them, and then we'll kind of discuss, because I think it's really prudent with knowing all these events and kind of just what it does to a city. So in this first one here, this local news is saying the past week has been much slower for expected bars and restaurants outside of the downtown area. We have that says, in preparation of the Super Bowl, state police forced over 100 homeless men and women onto buses under the threat of arrest, dumping them into a freezing warehouse, tents destroyed, belongings lost, press are barred from the site. The price tag for this cruelty, $17.5 million. And then we have this just from a local Facebook, a local Reddit thing about how small businesses who thought their stores, their restaurants would have a significant boost during this week, given all the people and tourists in town. It's been outsourced to big corporations like Pepsi or pop-ups like Visa outside around the Dome, and taking over streets and blocks that normally would have a lot more influx of people. And so that money that the city's earning will not go back to the people. And Bo, obviously want to ask you, is this something we can avoid? What is the way this works, and how cities and local governments could potentially fix this?
Well, yeah, see, the thing about the Super Bowl is, now the thing with, I guess, unhoused people is the term that we use now. This goes back forever. I remember when they had the Olympics in Atlanta, and they talked about rounding people up and just giving them bus tickets and get them out of there, because ain't nobody come to see that. I'm not saying it's cool. I'm not saying it's not inhumane. I'm just saying that's the way that they look at it. And the big part is, those cities don't want to look like cities that have people sleeping on the streets, even though these cities are cities that have people sleeping on the street, and it ain't the worst thing in the world. But I think the idea, though, that the business, that having the Super Bowl does not spread out to local business, is very, very interesting to me. And it's something that I hadn't really thought about. There are a couple of parts of it that, to me, I find interesting and that we could bring up right now. One of them is, when the Super Bowl is in a city like New Orleans, for example, there are a lot of, the Super Bowl is a very, very, very corporate event, okay? And a lot of the money that comes in is coming for the Super Bowl. And there are all these corporate activations, right? Somebody rents out this place to be a house. Somebody takes over this restaurant for a week or whatever. And they have all these events and everything comes in. And so when somebody like me comes in for the Super Bowl, you ask, yo, so what's cracking for the Super Bowl? And people are like, okay, this party's here. This event's there. Hennessy's, and I didn't go to no Hennessy thing, just throwing it out there, right? This brand is having this. This brand is having that. Up and down. And then that's where the people wind up going. And it becomes the cool stuff for you to do. Because it's like, hey, man, I hear blank is having an event. Of course you want to go there, right? I think I saw FanDuel. Their concert was bananas. I think they had Megan Thee Stallion and all these people in there. I saw our guy, Sean Anderson, was at that joint, I think, right? And so
countless number of artists. There were multiple concerts going on at the same time on Friday, like you said. So these people are flocking just to these events.
Right. And it's the people who come in for business all hanging out with each other.
Yes.
Right? It becomes like a meet and greet. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying this with no real level of judgment, because I'm one of those people. That's definitely how I was getting down. But I had lunch on Saturday with my guy David Dennis. And he is he's from Mississippi, but he's very New Orleans, right? I can't remember. I think his dad is from there. Either way, he yellow as hell. You know what I'm saying? You look at him, he look like New Orleans, I know white people think that was a slur, but it wasn't. Black people know exactly what I mean. But anyway, so with him, he was talking about how one night, and I missed it because I tapped out early. It was Friday night because I had run out of gas. And he was like, yeah, we went down. It was him and a few people. He's like, we went down on Frenchman Street. Frenchman Street's a spot where the locals will go, things a jazz, like a jazz drag or whatever. But that's when I talk to people from New Orleans, that's what they talk about. They going to kick it on a Friday night or whatever it is. Hey, man, ain't nobody really coming in from out of town unless you got that tour guide going to be the one to tell you that. So, yeah, it winds up that much of this traffic comes in and makes life hell on the locals. Then they buy, like, there's so much in New Orleans that's bought up by people who use them as Airbnbs, if I'm not mistaken. So the housing stock is affected by the idea of having these things. And the question is, what can be done about it? Our economic system is cooked in a lot of ways. But the other part is, people are not coming, and this is maybe the best way to put it. People are coming to the city for the Super Bowl. It may be a Super Bowl in the city they like, but they're not necessarily coming for the city. And since they're not coming for the city, they're not inclined to explore the city and go find those things. I will also make a point. I am reading a book right now called Filter World. I've already forgotten who the author is, but it makes the point of how one thing that with the internet and these algorithms guiding us so much, people run the same searches like, hey, what restaurant do I want to go to? And we have a tendency to stay on the first page. And so the out-of-towners are coming in and they're looking for a restaurant and they're all converging to the same restaurants because they're the ones that they heard was good, right? It's not, people are not getting, they're getting personalized selections based on what it is that they said that they've liked before, but not necessarily personalized based on where they are and what might be different. It might be something else that they want. So I do think that there's a convergence in the way that we use our technology, plus how these events have just become so corporatized that make it basically, there's a bunch of money that's coming in to help the city and a bunch of things to happen to help the city, but not the people who live in them.
Yeah, totally. And I think, something maybe that you could do is, like you said, is going and going out of your way to these local places. I know someone in the comments just mentioned Garden District being like a more local, centralized spot. I made it a point for myself to go check out this one restaurant I really wanted to check out. And they were, the people and the staff were very appreciative of, us being there and us putting them on blast. On the same end, like, there was a friend who had a restaurant reservation and Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce entered that restaurant and closed it down. And so that their reservation was no longer void. And so like you get like things like that where if you do want to support, you can, but the second something big or corporate comes in, it takes over that space and kind of prevents people to enjoy those local spots.
I'll tell you this though, I got out to the Garden District. I think that's where I met David at. And it was kind of like, oh, okay. But I had another thing that happened where I got just a little bit out of the French Quarter. It wasn't far. I went down on St. Charles. There's a hotel on St. Charles that's like walking distance of the quarter that I like. But it's interesting. You can tell one step over, got to Lafayette Square, which to me feels like it's the first clear sign that you are out of the mix. And I can't lie. It was just,
right.
It was inhale, exhale. And then who did I see walking past? Van Lathan, another local type dude.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? But I just sat out there for an hour because it was like, man, good to be out the mix. So maybe a suggestion to make to people is to get out the mix. But let me tell you what's hard to do once you get in the mix, to get out of it, especially on Saturday when they had that damn parade.
Yeah, I know. And I know you and Greg over here got caught up in that parade, which kind of gridlocked the city. I think something that's interesting, because we were in Super Bowl in Vegas last year, and I think that's a city built for corporations and built to like avoid this, because what's the local thing you're going to go? Summerlin or Henderson? Like that's a 20-minute drive,
I don't think they even want us or our money, right? Like if that were the case, they'd be trying to get, if that was the case, they'd be trying to get it every week, right? It's a Super Bowl every week in Vegas, every week.
So yeah, I'm curious how this is. I know some people were, looking at this and seeing what it could do to LA when the Olympics comes in 2028 and the fact that they have a Super Bowl just following after that. But I figured it was a nice conversation, and maybe there isn't a solution, but there's, like you said, there's always going to be Super Bowls.
Yes. By the way, I love it, Super Bowl city.
I was going to ask real quickly, what's your favorite Super Bowl city that like would do it good?
I mean, dude, you tell me it's an event in New Orleans, I'm there. I feel like these last two are kind of hard to beat. New Orleans and Vegas is kind of tough to beat.
And I remember I was in New Orleans for All-Star in I think it was 2015, and I was like, man, they really did it well. It beats you up, but
yeah, no. When it is at its best, Hey, nothing beating a good weekend in New Orleans, man. It ain't happening. It was hot as hell, though. Like, it was literally, like, it was to a point where I was like, damn, I wouldn't mind a little crisp in the air.
Yes, I agree. And then once I got back, I was like, this is the weather I was missing. But I will say, like, it was to the point where I was like, how do I schedule a trip back to New Orleans when it's not like this? You know, when it's not as crazy? Because there's so much of the city I had yet to explore.
I mean, the event for you was obvious.
Right.
Jazz Fest.
Right, exactly.
Like the Jazz Fest is the one, me and you, I still need to figure out when, but that's the one that's made for us, and it's before it get too hot. If you were single, I would say the Essence Fest, but, you know, I don't know if you... That's the Essence Fest. Look, I don't know what you like, but I bet you'd find something.
We could go right into voicemails. Your prompt on Friday when we were in Super Bowl in New Orleans was, I believe, a time a parent has yelled at you or you've got into it. You want to fight.
I believe it was
parent.
people. Yeah, people tried to fight. Yeah, people tried
Yes.
to fight your pops, which
Yes.
often and oldie but goodie. And I always have to say this when we do the voicemail. Just because you sent a voicemail before and it didn't get used, send it again, right? Because that, you know, they'll be forgetting. I think we need to remember to save some highlights, but they'll be forgetting. So there's always room for your story about that time your pops whooped your ass.
And they're all good. We got a lot of good submissions. Here's the first one.
What's up, Bo? Hey, long time listener, first time caller. It's kind of getting into the space of fighting with your dad, like trying to fight your dad. But no, I got a mom story that I'm pretty sure you'll like, right? Well, my parents divorced when I was 3. You know, sad story, but, you know, hey, I'm living with moms. And by the time I'm 11 or 12, you know, you start smelling yourself. You know, you do a lot of things. You know, you feel empowered. So I don't know what I said to this woman, but I know I ended with, man, that's why I'm gonna go with my daddy. Now, you know that's a trigger, a big trigger. When I say my mom pushing me up against the wall at her, she's 5. Let's say my mom is 5'4". Now I'm probably 5'6", 5'7" at the time, so I'm bigger than her. So she rushed me against the wall, pushing me up, and put her forearm into my throat and say, "Little nigga, I will kill you." And I think at that moment I never tried my mom again. God rest her soul. Have a good day, Bo.
Yo, that turned real fast. Now, I do admit that some may argue that there's a thin line between a funny story and child abuse. I do think that there's something to that. Like, I don't know. So like I always say, one thing I noticed, man, about this current generation of parents is y'all don't really be telling too many stories about how much you hate your kids. And I know sometimes you do. You're not fooling me. Every now and then you get them alone and then they explain that these things still happen, right? I don't know if the trauma generation can look back on it with the sense of humor that my generation can. Because I can't lie. I understand that some of you find these stories offensive, but I found that hilarious.
Once I heard that story, it reminded me of my childhood. I'm obviously like of a 1.5 immigrant family, and like, you know,
yes,
objectively speaking, my mom and dad would beat my ass sometimes if I got out of line. There was a point though where my mom, because I was a little too old and I really needed a scolding, she said, "This time you're going to hit me." And she put her hands out with the ruler and it broke me down, Bo. That was the moment where I was like, "Mom, you really fucked me up." And I didn't do anything bad for the rest of my life. That really, if you want to get into real psychological warfare, that's what you got to do.
That is amazing. She's like, "Nah, your turn." Damn, that's how much you hurt me.
Yes, my mom's an incredible woman, and I always bring that story up of like, "Oh, your kid's not listening to you? Try this one."
Wow.
All right, here's the next one.
Hey, Bomani. Hey, Sean. Just following up with your guys' prompt about the time you or someone you know tried their father. I've actually watched one of my friends try his dad. So what basically happened was we were in the basement playing video games. Very nice basement, fully redone. So me and my boy, Nick, just kicking it, playing video games, whatever. And his dad came home. And my friend and his dad like to, you know, squabble up a little bit, you know, roughhouse a bit. Just for context, Nick's Italian. And then I'm a Jamaican Ghanaian. So in African and Caribbean culture, it's not wise to go fight your dad or even attempt to fight your dad. Win or lose, you're getting kicked out of the house. Anyway, so my friend Nick, he saw his dad kind of chilling in his corner doing his thing while we're playing video games, and he kind of gave me a nudge and said, watch this. He got up, put his dad in a headlock. I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. And he kept his dad in the headlock. And another thing to consider too is his father looks like Agent 47 from Hitman. So that alone already gave me the creeps, and I didn't want to try this man. I don't have a deep vocabulary in combat sports, but his dad basically fully reversed that headlock and put him in the headlock. And Nick basically turned a bright shade of red. I've never seen him in before. It was very strange. I remember Nick's mom being upstairs. I didn't scream, I didn't yell, I didn't try to break them up. I literally just sat there stunned and watched one of my childhood friends get choked out by his dad. He didn't pass out, he didn't die or obviously anything like that. But eventually he just let him go. Nick's dad let him go, and just as a friendly reminder to me and him who the man in the house is, who pays the bills, and who owns the video games, and who got the basement finish, and it was bonkers. So hopefully you get this voicemail. All the best to you and your people. Peace.
Yeah, man, I've never been choked out, but boy, that sounds helpless.
Just the fact that the friend started thinking it was a good idea to choke out your dad, and then getting the reversal is like, you better learn today.
What a horrible, all of it, like
tough.
What?
Here's the next one.
What's good, Bo? I'm calling in from Omaha, Nebraska. I just want to start the story of, me fighting my pops. So he used to always make me take out the trash, but he used to demand it. And as a kid, I always used to hate taking out the trash. So I told you I was from Omaha, Nebraska for a reason. So I'm boxing with my cousin. My cousin is a world famous boxer now. I'm not going to say his name, but I'm boxing with my cousin. I'm learning. So I'm 15 at the time. I'm in high school. He tells me, yo, take out the trash. I buck up. I said, what? I said, who you talking to? He looked around to the left, looked around to the right, and he got up, and then he was like, what? What did you say? I said, who you talking to? I take out the trash when I feel like it. My mom must have came out of the room because she, already thought something was going to happen. All I can say is as I got into my stance, the next thing I know, my head was on the side of the glass window. And all I can remember is my mom grabbing him up off me. And my little brother told me the story. He was like, yo, Dad was banging your head against the window. He almost killed you. And that's all I can remember. But that's my story, Bomani. See you, man. Love the show.
I appreciate that, and I just want to say to you, brother, Omaha ain't big enough to have two world famous boxers, my man. We all know exactly who you're talking about. Maybe not all, but Sean from the chat room, it seems that quite a few people immediately gleaned who it was the moment that I also gleaned who it was.
Yeah, you clocked it pretty early, and I figured you would.
What is it in Belly where you talk about the hardest dude in Nebraska or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm going to just throw this out there about Nebraska right fast because I've seen some people in the chat being like, oh, I didn't know Nebraska was body. My brother had a homeboy from Omaha, and my brother used to mess with him about Omaha this, Omaha that. And my brother's homeboy Dre told him, I'd drop you off in Omaha, you wouldn't make it home. With a straight face.
Imagine a Super Bowl in that city.
Yeah. Oh, God, that sounds cold. Frigid, in fact. Sean, you got our prize picks for the people?
I sure do. NBA slate. Luka Doncic makes his debut against the Utah Jazz. So 27.5 points. Obviously, I'm taking more. LeBron James, 40.5 points, rebounds, and assists will take more. And adding in here, Trae Young against the Orlando Magic, 25.5 points. I will take more in that divisional matchup.
Boy, by the way, people still mad about Luka. We didn't really have a chance to get to that, but
we'll get to it again this week. Yeah, we got to see the good guess for it.
They're still mad. It is Man, anyway, that's a different discussion for a different day. But ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here on The Right Time. We do this here 3 times a week. That's Sean Yu. He handles everything behind the scenes. Thank you, sir. Also, remember, we got an ad-free version of The Right Time in partnership with Supercast. $5 a month. Ad-free versions of every episode plus bonus content. So check that out at Supercast. Also, thanks again to Apple Podcasts for selecting us as the pick of the month. Remember, follow The Right Time. Subscribe, like, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. You only give us 4 stars, I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. We'll talk to you guys in a couple of days. Take it easy.